just gonna get right down to business here. This last week in the aviation industry has been a doozy. There are things that have been going on that just don't seem to be making the news. So I'm gonna tell you about them. This last week, there were 3 incidents that just occurred that I just don't really have an explanation for, but I'm gonna share them with you. And at the end, I'm gonna discuss why I think they're happening. First of all 3 of these incidents, it seems to me to just be pilot error and really nothing more. Why are these pilot error incidents occurring more and more often? Is it diversity coming to roost? Is it pilot pushing? Is it, I don't know, the pilot shortage forcing the airlines to hire inexperienced pilots that just aren't ready yet for the seats? All right, hold on to the end. I'm gonna give you my opinion on all of that, but let's talk a little bit about what is going on here. So the first incident I wanna talk about is something that just happened coming into Houston, Texas. A United Airlines Boeing 767-300ER, that's a wide-body international aircraft, extended range, big airplane, 204 souls on board. They came in to land at Houston and they hit the runway so hard on their landing that they bent the fuselage of the aircraft. Okay, let me say that again. They hit the runway so hard, they bent the fuselage of the aircraft. How do you do that? So much for airplanes fly themselves. Yeah, no, airplanes don't fly themselves. Pilots fly airplanes. And it takes a certain level of skill to land a wide body aircraft. If you don't have that skill, if you don't have that skill nailed down, you should not be flying an airplane with 204 passengers. Just saying. So I had to look into this. How could this be? How could this happen? United is a good airline. They have good training. They have good pilots. Well, looking into the history of this pilot, who is the flying pilot, the first officer, it seems that this pilot was a flight attendant at United Airlines, and they recently, just in the last number of months, transitioned over to United into the pilot seat. Now they went through pilot training, not at United, but they got all their qualifications and their ratings. They worked for several different commuter airlines before coming to United, and from everything that I have been able to find, this particular pilot had a very, very troubled training record. Very troubled. It appears they lost their last job due to their lack of skills, and United Airlines picked them up. They came to United, went through United's training, and consistently did very, very poorly. Yet United continued to train and to push them through. This individual was put onto special tracking, which means they had to come back to the training center every 3 months for further evaluations and training versus the 9 months standard that the FAA mandates and everybody else has to go through. Well, I'll just end by saying that this particular pilot is no longer a pilot for United Airlines. Okay, going on to the next incident. So, a Delta Boeing 767-300ER, yes, another 767-300ER, was just recently involved in a fairly significant incident. This aircraft was departing from Milan, and they flew directly into a hailstorm, a big hailstorm. This aircraft suffered significant structural damage from the hail. Significant structural damage. They are really lucky they were able to get the aircraft on the ground. They declared an emergency, landed it in Rome. They're even luckier they didn't have their engines flame out, sucking in all of that hail. All right, they made it. Everybody's fine. But the question is, how did this happen? It seemed pretty unnecessary that you would fly into a hailstorm that every other airplane managed to avoid. how did this Delta aircraft find themselves inside a hailstorm? Well, an aircraft, a 767, I've got lots of time on the 767. The radar on it, it's pretty good, but it's not like what you think. It's not like what you'd see on the Weather Channel. It's not that black and white as far as understanding what you're looking at. And it takes a certain level of training, of skill, of expertise to really use it properly and correctly, and to be able to use your radar to avoid areas that are dangerous, weather areas that are dangerous. Now, to use the weather radar, you need to really understand how it works. You need to understand tilt, you need to understand gain, you need to understand attenuation, you need to recognize attenuation so that you don't fly into something that maybe isn't visible up there, but you should know is there anyways. You need to understand meteorology, and that takes a certain level of education. Now, when you're using this radar, it's really hard to tell the difference between, I don't know, clouds versus mountains, rain versus convective currents, turbulence versus, oh, I don't know, hail. For some reason, these pilots couldn't quite figure it out. Now, I'm asking myself, why is that? Somebody who's flying a wide body international, they should have the seasoning to have had enough experience using this radar to really know what they're doing. So looking into this incident, it seems as if the captain on this flight was a relative new hire at Delta. I believe he'd only been there for 14 months. And he was a captain on a wide body international. That's a lot of responsibility for somebody that only has 14 months in the equipment at the airline. And on top of that, this pilot was based in New York. Now, let me just say something about New York. New York is a tough domicile to be based out of for a multiple number of reasons. But for one, when you're based in New York, you're responsible for 3 airports. You're responsible for LaGuardia, JFK, and for Newark. All 3 of those airports are tough airports to fly out of for a number of reasons. One is the weather on the Northeast corridor. It can be really severe. You have all 4 seasons, and you have all 4 seasons hard. You need to understand thunderstorms and how to operate in and around them, as well as you need to understand ice and snow and everything that comes with winter operations. New York also, in the New York airspace, is very tightly controlled, very congested, because you have 3 major airports right on top of each other. The air traffic controllers in New York are the best. And that's saying a lot. I've flown into a lot of different areas. A lot of controllers are pretty amazing. Chicago controllers never cease to impress me. But New York is a special kind of breed. These guys, they are rapid talk. They talk, you listen, you comply. They do not stop to take a breath. And it's hard. If you're a pilot and you aren't really super comfortable and you aren't really experienced, it's hard to operate in that environment. Now you put that together with a new hire in a wide body flying international and equipment that he's not that familiar with, put them in charge, put them in this airspace, put them in this domicile, it's a perfect storm. So why, I guess the question is, are inexperienced pilots going to these positions and these domiciles? Well, isn't that a good question? Let me just say that when you work for an airline, your pay is exactly the same no matter where you're based. So if you were a Delta pilot and you were getting paid the same, would you choose to work in, I don't know, like Atlanta, Georgia, and live down there, or New York City? Well, New York City is a junior base. What does that mean? That means that junior people go to New York City for the most part, right? So you're gonna get people with a lot less experience flying this equipment in this airspace that really takes the highest level of skill. All right, so why is this? It's because of our seniority system. Now, I'm not knocking our seniority system. I totally get it. Your seniority means everything. You should be able to bid based on what you can hold. And if you can hold something down in Georgia, why would you want to be flying out of New York? I get that. But boy, I'm telling you, if you're going to combine that seniority system with inexperience, we're going to have problems. And we are having problems. And it's all coming to roost now, isn't it? All right. I'm not really sure what the fix is for that, but it's something to be aware of. All right, I'm going to go on to the third incident, which of all of them, I think is even the most frightening. Delta 1437, a Boeing 757-200, landed at Atlanta, niner left, and on landing blew out a tire. This created a fire. Okay, this can happen, but the part that has me scratching my head was the lack of response by the flight crew. Now, the air traffic controller saw the fire right after landing, immediately told the crew. The pilot, I assume was a captain, was talking with her, but didn't really seem to respond, didn't seem to react to the fact that his aircraft was on fire. Now, the controller had cleared another aircraft, line up and wait behind this landing Delta aircraft. She canceled that clearance because she could see that this aircraft was on fire. And for 2 minutes and 32 seconds, she repeatedly told the pilot that she saw a fire, that she saw flames. And it took him that long before he acknowledged it and initiated an evacuation. 2 minutes and 32 seconds with this aircraft burning, 190 passengers? What am I missing here? All right, so Delta put out an official statement lauding their crew for doing such an exceptional job with the evacuation, which I will say that once they started the evacuation, they did do a great job. Everybody got off safely and rode away in buses. Delta put out a statement saying that the aircraft blew a tire on landing. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, I'm not so sure. That aircraft has fusible plugs, which is a safety device, which all Boeing have. It's a great system. It basically have thermal expansion is generated inside a tire whenever there's hard braking conditions. And we have tubeless tires on these aircraft, and that can cause thermal expansion, which can cause an explosion, which can cause a very catastrophic fire. And so we have fusible plugs that will release the high pressure inside the tires in a controlled fashion. Works great. So did the tires just deflate? Passengers reported hearing loud bangs. That could be the fuse plugs blowing, or did they actually hit so hard or brake so hard that the tires blew out? I don't know. But the bottom line is the aircraft was on fire and there was such slow response by the crew to get those passengers off the airplane. I don't know what's going on here. All right, let me circle back to the beginning now. Apparently, more and more incidents are happening. That, or there's just more awareness of these incidents. It's probably a little bit of both, right? So why is this? Okay, so there's the pilot shortage. I don't know if I really buy that. I think it's a little bit manufactured. If you look at the statistics, the truth is we're producing a lot more pilots than there are job openings. But we're hiring really fast. And with COVID, things shut down, pilots retired, and now passengers are back. The airlines want to make money again, and boy, people want to fly. So pilots are being hired quickly. So we're getting pilots that are qualified, but aren't really seasoned yet, into senior positions where they have a lot of command authority that they may not be ready for. that's a problem, and I'm not really sure what to do about that, but over time that should self-correct. All right, now we've got the whole diversity issue, right? Anytime an incident happens, the assumption is that must have been a woke decision and that person shouldn't have been there.
The CEO of United Airlines last month, the CEO, he announced of all the hiring for all the new pilots that are coming up this year, all the hiring for the new pilots, the main focus is going to be diversity. What? Diversity? Not the best pilots you can find? The ones with the most hours and experience? Ones you've done it before?
Well, the truth is, if you look at these incidents, the first one, which was a flight attendant, was a male flight attendant. It wasn't a minority at all right? They still couldn't fly. Second one, I don't believe race or gender was a factor on either one of those either. The third one, it looks like the first officer was a female, but she wasn't in charge, was she? It was the captain. The captain is the one that calls the shots. The captain is the one that makes all the decisions. So, I don't know. I think diversity is kind of an excuse. That being said, I really don't like it when the airlines advertise that they're going to hire a certain number of people based on anything other than their qualifications.
I've committed that 50% of the class of the classes will be women or people of color.
That bothers me a lot. It bothers me because it's really hard on people like me. If you could fly the airplane, and I can fly an airplane, the assumption is when people see me, she must be here for the wrong reason. I've dealt with that for decades, right? I can tell you right now that if you have someone that looks like me and they have a bad landing, everybody says, oh, there you go. I saw that coming. But then if you have, I don't know, a white guy with gray hair and a deep graveled voice, and he makes the exact same landing, the reaction is going to be, poor guy must have been a crosswind, right? That's just the way that it is. And I don't think CEOs promoting hiring people for any reason other than their qualifications is helping the cause. All right, all that said, I do think it's important to get people into the seats from all walks of life. Our pilots should represent our passengers. And I think that awareness does need to be created and put out there to all sorts of groups who otherwise would not know that they could be a pilot. I'm all for information. I'm all for awareness. I'm all for these STEM outreach programs, exposing people who otherwise would have no way of knowing that this is something that's available to them and something that they could do. That said, they have to be able to do it. And I think that they can. I think there's a lot of false assumptions out there. Anybody who is hired does have to go through the same training, has to meet the same qualifications. And honestly, people, if you look like me, you're going to work a lot harder. You're going to overstudy. You're going to make sure that every time you go to work, you know exactly what you're doing and you're prepared, because you have to be. You have to be. Because if you slip up at all, everyone's going to be talking about you. And so I personally have not experienced minorities being anything other than very well prepared, very skilled, very competent pilots. That's been my experience. All right. Thank you, everybody. I super appreciate the time that you've given me. For all of you hanging in till the end, thank you. And if you want to see more, like and subscribe. Thanks. Everybody, have a great day. Bye.